Hello and welcome. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we came across this book titled Revelation of Genesis, The Lost Ages, from Ethiopian Manuscripts of an Anonymous, in 8 volumes by Francis Rother, T.R. or T.R. Rother Francis, publication date 1890. So we wondered, who is this Stanley Rother? So we went online to find out who he was, and we came across this person here, Stanley Francis Rother, born March 27, 1935, died July 28, 1981. Was an American Catholic priest from Oklahoma, USA, who was murdered in Guatemala in 1981. He had worked as a missionary priest there since 1968. He held several parish assignments as a priest of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, USA, from 1963 to 1968, before being assigned to Guatemala. On December 1, 2016, Pope Francis confirmed that Rother had died a martyr, murdered for his faith, and Rother was beatified on September 23, 2017, in Oklahoma City. He is the first US-born priest and martyr to be beatified by the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the second person to be beatified on American soil after the New Jersey-born nun Miriam Teresa Demjanovic in 2014. His life, story, education and priesthood. He was born March 27 in Okake, one of 4 children of Okaachi, one of 4 children of Francis Rother, etc., etc. He was strong and adept at farm tasks. He decided to become a priest after completing high school at Holy Trinity School. He studied at St. John Seminary and then Assumption Seminary in San Antonio, Texas. He served as a sacristan, whatever that is, an officer charged with care of the sacristy, the church and their content. Groundskeeper, bookbinder, plumber and gardener. After almost 6 years, seminary staff advised him to withdraw due to academic struggles, particularly with Latin. Following consultation with Bishop Victor Reed of Oklahoma City, Rother attended Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Emmitsburg, Maryland, from which he graduated in 1963. Bishop Reed ordained him to the priesthood on May 25, 1963. Rother served as a parochial vicar in various parishes around Oklahoma: St. William in Durant, St. Francis Xavier and the Holy Family Cathedral in Tulsa, and Corpus Christi in Oklahoma City. In 1968, at his own request, Reed assigned him to the diocese mission to the Zuu people, also spelled Zuu of Santiago Atitlan, in the rural highlands of southwest Guatemala. He went to a Guatemala mission to better connect with his congregation. He learned Spanish and the Zuu language, which was an unwritten Mayan language first recorded by the missionary Ramon Carlin. He served in Santiago Atitlan from 1968 until his death. He supported a radio station located on the mission property, which transmitted daily lessons in language and mathematics. In 1973, he noted in a letter, "I am now preaching in Zuu. During that time, in addition to his pastoral duties, he translated the New Testament into Zuu and began regular masses in Zuu. In the late 1960s, Rother founded in Panabaj, a small hospital dubbed the Hospitalito. Father Carlin was a collaborator in this project. By 1975, Rother had become the de facto leader of the Oklahoma-sponsored mission effort in Guatemala, as other religious and lay supporters rotated out of the program. He was a prominent figure in the community, owing to his light complexion as well as his habit of smoking tobacco in a pipe. Since there was no Zuu equivalent for Stanley, the people of Rother's mission affectionately called him Padre Aplas, Father Francis, a nod to his other given name. Final months of murder. Within the last year of his life, Rother saw the radio station destroyed and its director murdered. Some of his catechists basic Christian religious education of children and adults, often from a catechism book. It started as education on converts to Christianity, but as the religion became institutionalized, catechesis was used for education of members who had been baptized, etc. And parishioners would disappear and later be found dead, their corpses showing signs of beating and torture. Rother knew all this upon returning to Guatemala in May 1981. In December 1980, he had written a letter to the faithful in Oklahoma describing the violent situation. This is one of the reasons I have for staying in the face of physical harm. The shepherd cannot run at the first sight of danger. In the beginning of 1981, Rother was warned that his name was 8th on a hit list of right-wing death squads and that he should immediately leave Guatemala to stay alive. Rother reluctantly returned to Oklahoma in January, and while home in Okarche, said Mass served by Daniel Henry Mugenborg, American prelate of the Roman Catholic Church, who has been serving as bishop for the Diocese of Reno in Nevada, USA since 2021. He served as an auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of Seattle in Washington State from 2017 to 2021. Okay, a college student who became inspired by Rother to pursue the priesthood, though he later asked the Archbishop for permission to return. Another reason for returning was that he wanted to celebrate Easter with them. Rother returned to Santiago Atitlán in April, aware that he was being watched. On the morning of July 28, 1981, just after midnight, gunmen broke into Rother's rectory. The assassins forced a teenager named Francisco Bosell, who was in the church, to show them Rother's bedroom. The men threatened to kill Bosell if he did not lead them to Rother, so he led them down a flight of stairs and knocked on a nearby door. Rother opened the door and a struggle ensued as Bosell fled. Rother was shot twice in the head. Rother was one of 10 priests murdered in Guatemala that year. His remains were flown back to Oklahoma and buried in Holy Trinity Cemetery in his hometown on August 3, 1981. At the request of his former Sisu Utulil parishioners, his heart was removed and buried under the altar of the church in Santiago Atitlán. 3 men were arrested on charge of murder within weeks of Rother's murder. Another man and woman were also sought for questioning at that stage. The 3 men arrested admitted to having entered the church in a robbery attempt and to having shot Rother dead when the priests tried to stop them. Despite the confessions, many people familiar with the circumstances of the murder considered the 3 accused men innocent, and prosecutions a cover-up of paramilitary involvement in the murder. Convictions for all 3 men were later overturned by a Guatemalan appellate court under pressure from U.S. authorities. No other suspects have been prosecuted for Rother's murder. Beatification. The beatification process was set up to open in the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, but the cause first had to be transferred there from Guatemala. A cause opened in the diocese where the individual died. The forum transfer was granted by the Diocese of Sololachimautinango to the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City on September 3rd, 2007. He goes on about that. And then Rother's beatification received approval from Pope Francis, who confirmed that Rother had been killed in odium fidei, in hatred of the faith. Rother was beatified on September 23rd, 2017 at the Cox Convention Centre with Cardinal Angelo Amato, prefect of the CCS, presiding on the Pope's behalf. The beatification mass was attended by 20,000 people. And so forth. The postulator for the cause was Andre Ambrosi. A mission church has since been named after him in Decatur, Arkansas, in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Little Rock. It is the first Catholic church in the world dedicated to Rother. There's a shrine, and there's other references, etc. So back to the website which reveals this book. We actually highlighted a person's comment below this in the comment section. You may want to listen to that.
Within the next short time, there will soon appear a new global political system, structure. It will be a combination of the old order and the new order. It is true that some of the material presented below may seem a bit unusual, at first, to people, especially if you are not in the West. But these are unusual times to be living in. The people who made these plans are the same ones who have been directing the affairs of the world since the 1850s, and earlier. They are the ones who controlled the British Empire. They were also the founders of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which directed the British Empire and the birth of the European Union. They were the followers of the hidden intrigues and commands of Ruskin and Milner. They included such figures as Toynbee, the Huxleys, who founded and ran UNESCO, and H.G. Wells, who wrote propaganda for the coming order, in the form of novels. H.G. Wells also wrote non-fiction as well. We should almost be remiss if we failed to mention old Van der Post, the occultist who was the personal mentor to Prince Charles. But the information about the global impact of this new political alliance will affect everyone, especially those in Asia, Africa and other parts of the world that do not yet know what will soon happen. It is still important to document, demonstrate and offer help for others to be able to understand what is happening, even if these sources seem a bit strange or unusual. Please understand that the average person in the West does not have much understanding of what is happening, especially as much of the planning and development is hidden, by some, within the political class, until the very last moment. For the record, it should be noted that almost all the regular and ordinary people who live in the West do not want to do harm to anyone, they only want to live their own life in peace. But in many cases, the leaders of the governments in the West are themselves not in control of their own government. The same is also true of nations in Africa and Asia. This includes the governments in Islamic states. Those nations are increasingly under the control of Mahdist elements, who are determined to bring in an Islamic Messiah whom they hope will rule the planet for a period of chaos and war that will last 7 years. These groups are called Twelvers in the West, because they are trying to usher in the appearance and rule of the 12th Mahdi, also known as Messiah number 12. There is documentation on this individual and he is part of 3 rulers who will rule over earth for 7 years, according to the ancient book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is the last book in the Bible. There are many books in the Old and New Testament that describe him. Only unfortunately, the 12th Imam is not the Messiah that those in Islam currently think he is. If people personally studied the ancient books for themselves, such as the Old and New Testament, they would find answers. It is true that people become like the God they worship. If the God they worship is a God of love, peace, and kindness, then that is what the followers become like. If the God they worship is a God of war, if the God they worship is one of forced conquest, denying basic liberties, treating people as though they have no value, and not a God of love or kindness, then that is what the followers become like. The soon-to-arrive false Messiah will arrive using peace, but will then turn to war. And this soon-to-happen religion itself will not be Islam, but rather Chrislam, a combination of both political Christianity, Islam and occultism. There are systems at least as old as the Vatican, which represents political spirituality, and not genuine Christianity. Most people cannot discuss these topics, because they do not understand the spiritual dynamics that are involved in global politics. Those involved in the occult do have a name for their process, though, their process of taking control. It is called the externalization of the hierarchy. This is when those who are the fallen angels in control of the top occult groups in the world unveil themselves to their followers and to some others as the leaders of the dark forces. Some of them will materialize in physical form. It is called the externalization because this is when the evil spirits go from simply being controllers on the inside, in the hidden and spirit world, to being external overt controllers. in some cases announcing themselves and taking on actual physical form, which is when they are externalizing. They have been practicing this unveiling every year already in the high mountains, often in Asia, and at that occult occurrence and festival is known as the Occult Festival of Wesak. However, more and more, it is the dark occult spiritual element in all nations and all governments that is taking control. Those dark forces try to resist people finding true liberty in a spirituality of freedom by understanding who Jesus Christ actually was and is, and how to have eternal life and forgiveness of sins. This can be obtained by anyone, and it is entirely free, and salvation cannot be attained by the good works of individual humans. Islam claims to understand Jesus Christ, but the words of Moses, and the words of Jesus Christ, are found only in the Christian Bible, and there are many accurate copies that do exist. True spiritual freedom can be found in Jesus Christ, the same Jesus who is found in the authentic words of the authentic Old and New Testaments. It does not matter what language you read. You can look at the documents in Latin, in ancient Greek, in Persian, in Arabic, or in Amharic, Ethiopic. These New Testaments all say the same thing, if you are not reading from a Bible that has been changed. The accurate text of the Old Testament, even the old accurate text in ancient Hebrew, which both agrees with the Dead Sea Scrolls and is also the same Hebrew text used to translate the Old Testament into other languages, is still available. So is the accurate text of the New Testament. A standard accurate New Testament, or Bible in English, is the KJV, 1611. Note: KJV equals King James Version, or the Geneva edition. They are both accurate. Better to study a little bit, and learn to use a good English Dictionary, Volume 1, and English Dictionary, Volume 2, such as the 1828 edition of Webster, instead of reading modern English versions of the Bible, that are bad and poor translations. From the point of view of accuracy, many modern versions of the Old and New Testament are easy to misunderstand. In addition, those who are alive during the days of the end of this age will witness the arrival of a very ancient race of special beings, who are not human, who are in Genesis declared to be sons of God. They are not the sons of God in any exclusive sense, such as the historic Jesus Christ, who is the one and only begotten unique pre-existent member of the Trinity. But rather these will be fallen angels who are likely to be able to materialize physically, take on physical forms and attributes. Some will have more spiritual power than others. Others will appear to have supernatural powers. Still others will be hybrids, combinations of both human and fallen angel DNA. These technologies seem impossible to those who have not studied it, but fallen beings, under the control of their fallen lord Satan, who are at least 6,000 years old, and who have the intellect of Einstein, easily have the intelligence to create forms and versions of themselves that blend human and non-human attributes. This is the first steps in their new terraforming, their own plans designed to rule this planet and replace humans. Anyone seeking to do this would obviously deny this is what they are doing, and these non-humans will at first take the position of appearing to be the friend of all humans, with promises of immortality and superpowers for those who want those options. It will be a clever deception, but most people will go along. Most humans will be seduced by this alternative, which will be false. There is technology in the West that is being actively developed in order to make their arrival on Earth a very real fact. Some of that technology has taken place and been developed also in areas controlled by Islam. That is not a secret to those who are the kings of the earth. Some will think that this cannot take place because there is not enough time to accomplish these things scientifically, but that is not the case. The fact is that these plans have been implemented already, and they are already very far advanced. The scientific knowledge that these beings have is much greater than the science that is generally known. Some have suggested that there are already many hybrids who have combined human and non-terrestrial attributes in the thousands and thousands, but they are waiting, like a patient and disciplined army, for the day to reveal themselves and begin the next phase of their work. Yet still many hybrids will remain concealed and continue their work in obedience to their Lord. Those who reveal themselves will pretend to be the freest of all people, but have no delusions, much like the armies created to serve Saruman, Lo-Tr. These are hybrids in bondage, bound by their creation and their nature, who serve their fallen Lord in fealty and allegiance to him. They have no free will, but their ability to deceive many will be very great. The New Testament actually predicted these events when it was foretold that the last days would be like the days of Noah. Those who want to know more about the future would do well to study the days of Noah and the origins of the founders of Babylon and their system of rule, religion and dominion. The works of Layard and Rawlinson disclose facts about the ancient civilizations, and those who ran them, that have been omitted from the history books. Layard was an archaeologist both at Nineveh, Direct PDF, Volume 1, and Direct PDF, Volume 2, and Babylon. But the archaeological and linguistic discoveries of Rawlinson, Oxford, about the accuracy of the Bible are amazing and worth your time. Those ancient records all confirm and testify to the facts that ancient evil leaders, directed by evil spirits of Babylon, VOL1 and VOL2, interfaced, contacted, and regularly interacted with those evil demonic beings. That is what the ancient records demonstrate. Saying such events also occur in our time, even in the form of UFOs, OVNI, and other phenomena may surprise ordinary mortals and average people. But these changes and announcements will not surprise those who have studied the details of Christianity in its true and historic forms. What is true is that the books of the Old Testament, measured as 39 books by Christians, which are the same 22 books of the Old Testament as is counted by Jews. And the content of these 39 and 22 books are identical to each other, and the books of the New Testament, all 27 of them, from Matthew to Revelation, are the authentic and inspired works of God. That does not change, and will not change. Those books will not be any less relevant soon, even when great events, earthquakes, catastrophes, and the rearrangement of global political and economic power takes place. Does anyone really think that God in heaven could not foretell when most humans would give their allegiance to a false Messiah who would require mankind to worship him, and confirm this by taking a tattoo? Early technology is discussed in spy chips, or mark into their right hand or forehead, which would contain the number 666. The passage about this in the New Testament is found in Revelations, chapter 13. Did anyone think really either that God would not notice, or that God was the author of such a scheme? God plainly declared in his sacred books of the Old Testament, Daniel, and New Testament, 1 Thessalonians and the book of Revelation, that this new economic system was rebellion against him. And he would treat that system of commerce and rebellion, and those who adhered to it, as such. Each of us chooses our own eternal destination, by the choice we make, about what we chose to spiritually understand or not. A decision to not choose is also a choice, only a choice in the wrong direction. Better instead, to choose a right, wise and spiritually self-helpful choice, such as accepting to the Lord God of the universe and his system prescribed in the New Testament. Still, as opposed to false religions that physically force and coerce someone to make a false allegiance externally, to what they do not truly believe in their heart. God looks on the heart and wants those who seek him to come genuinely to him. Some people think that Islam is making progress in order to serve as resistance against the West. Keep thinking this if you want to. Can you not see that most political systems are making their own levels of effort toward dictatorship, toward the loss of personal rights and personal liberty and freedoms? Who do you think trains these forces? Who do you think buys the books? Some know about this in Turkey, and they think they have plans which are alternative plans. That is false. Who do you think controls the economies of Africa? Who do you think controls the economic realities in Greece or Cyprus? Who do you think controls Turkey, both the surface and the deep state? It is forces in the West, in the European aristocracy and elites, who also plan wars against Christianity. They worship the god of Mammon, money, also known as the god of forces. They are occultists who are the controllers of money, currency and the wealth of the world. Their wars are not for or against religions. Their wars and plans are against your soul, and against anyone learning how to go to heaven, and find true spiritual freedom by learning about reconciliation with God, by any human. Through Jesus Christ. Any human being can be saved, and can find eternal life through Jesus Christ. But the fact is that Islamic leaders and Islam is funded by the West, in order to help serve as deception for mankind. Islam and Christianity will soon appear to be reconciled, appear to come together, appear to agree, appear to work in sufficient harmony. In order to bring in this new global economic cashless system. This will be a system where everyone will have a marked tattoo on their right hand or forehead, in order to be in commerce, in order to buy or sell. This system, which will be global and electronic, will affect everyone on the planet. And the whole world will be forced by this global leader and his occult power holders to participate. The Book of Revelation, sometimes called Apocalypse, explains and confirms the ancient scenarios found in the Old Testament book of Daniel. That the electronic mark, tattoo on the right hand or forehead will be voluntary. B. It will contain or incorporate the number 666 into it. And C. Anyone who takes the mark confirms their own binding contract with Satan Lucifer, whereby they adjure, forsake and renounce any claim and possibility of either reconciliation with God, and any possibility of spending eternity with God and others in heaven, instead of being permanently separated from God. People think that this cannot and will not take place. Further, those who accept this mark tattoo become spiritually deceived, thinking that the false Messiah is the true one, until it is too late for them, their soul, and their eternal existence. Each one of us will continue to exist in eternity, for eternity. The only question is where that existence takes place. But these events were accurately foretold 2,000 years ago. And obviously those who accept to give their allegiance to Lucifer, Satan, will deny doing this, and they will also deny that the mark is any statement of allegiance at all. They will insist on seeing this as though it were economic, even though God has already pronounced his own evaluation on those who make that wrong choice. It is, however, usually understood that those who refuse to accept the mark will be denounced by the government and society, and the penalty for refusal will be death. These events are written and foretold in the New Testament book of Revelation and in the Old Testament book of Daniel. These books must be read as complements to each other, in order to be understood. Spiritual conversions that are made or prompted by force are, by definition, without sincerity, without substance, without genuineness, and without effect. No one can change what takes place between a human and God. Coercion, force, cruelty are wrong. They are the measures and tactics of the weak, and of those who are simply afraid for themselves. Authentic Christianity suffers from no such illusions. And please do not confuse the political actions of the Vatican with any concept of true Christianity. The Vatican is too often Christian in name only, and the popes have tried for centuries to amass personal, temporal and political power for themselves. There are hundreds of millions of Christians today, who do not follow the Vatican, who have nothing to do with the Vatican, and who do not share the Vatican's perspective that they would claim to speak for God. Such claims have in the past proven disastrous, both for the Vatican and for those who followed their anti-Christian claims, and their actions of harm to others. We can only hope that the Vatican is not the same, though historically, those within its walls and dedicated to its service, seem dedicated to the notion that they alone can speak for God. The Vatican has had trouble understanding that others, even if they are wrong, still have the right to be wrong. The Great Reformation in the 1500s had to arise and convince the Vatican to allow others the ability to pursue true spirituality in paths that are not pre-approved by the Pope, who spent far too much time pursuing power, and far too little time following the teachings of Jesus. Even today, the Vatican as a nation-state has retained the right to print and coin money. This extends to the euro, and to potentially any other new and cashless currency. The older works of from Paoli Sarpi to Nino Bello testify to hard habits that the Vatican may or may not wish to break. From the Ambrosiano Bank to the Vatican still owning at least 1/3 of the property of Rome, the Vatican understands economics and finance better than many governments. The Vatican is the oldest continual monarchy in the world. But our focus must not be the Vatican, but rather our own struggle to understand what is the true and authentic Christianity which Jesus Christ preached, taught and lived during his time on earth. In contrast to human systems, the Christian God is quite big enough to defend himself. He does not need the coercion, cruelty and force against the will of any human, in order to demonstrate that he is God. And disagreement with this will not change these facts. God established his ways, and his rules thousands of years before anyone who reads these pages will have read them. God's true ways are the way of God, and they bring peace, joy, forgiveness and unconditional love to those who truly seek him with all of their heart. The Christian God is both perfect justice and perfect love, but the love of God is extended to anyone who dares to take it, to receive it, to appropriate it and believe in the New Testament, regardless of what they have done in their past. There is no sin that God cannot forgive.
And that's a really lengthy comment by a certain person who gave a review on this particular book, Revelation of Genesis, The Lost Ages from Ethiopian Manuscripts of an Anonymous in 8 volumes by Francis Rother. So if you found it very interesting, like, subscribe, add your comments below the video. We'll get back to you on those as soon as we can. And then go share this rather long spiel with all your family, friends and others. And don't forget to watch part 2, because we're going to go through it and explain where this guy is right, or this commenter is right or totally wrong, using the original, ancient, very old, hidden, therefore preserved for over 2,000 years, original, ancient, very old Galilean manuscripts, translated into the nearest English equivalent by the native-born Aramaic speaking translator from Mesopotamia, Syria, Victor Alexander, who translated all into nearest English equivalent. From the Apostolic Church of the East, that which was founded by Thomas around 1st century AD, and more. So don't forget to come and watch part 2. We promise there won't be a long spiel. It'll be just going through this particular spiel and pointing out what is true and what is totally in error, because there are errors there. It's a mixture of fact, conspiracies, fiction and so forth. We will point that out to you in part 2. So won't you join us? We'll see you then.